Mount Okepamo, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of On Point. Today we are going to be talking legalistics. We're going to be talking legal issues. And we have some people who are trained in that area to discuss, to help us untangle the legal jargon, the meanings of it. And there's only one qualified person here with the legal knowledge to do so. That would be Mr. Wonder Framer. He will talk to us about what these things mean on the Liberian people, our constitution, what does the constitution say, what does our belief system say about the law, the rule of law. Then we're going to talk about the politics, the promises made, those who came with the mantle of rule of law. We'll talk about how are they doing. So let me introduce to you the great men of On Point. They have always been on point. The best talk show on FOL. Hands down, no competition. Ladies and gentlemen, my co-host, Mr. Jimmy Eastman from the nation's capital. How you doing there, sir?
Hey, Mr. excuse me, Mr. Gaiman. It's a pleasure to be here. I know we got some good topics here, and it's an honor to be here with these luminaries.
Great. That's from the nation's capital, ladies and gentlemen. Now let me go to the city of brotherly love, or Trenton, New Jersey, my old stomping ground, with my own brother from the UPP. We are the back of Matthew boys. Mr. Victor Nangwe, welcome.
Hey, listen, I live in South Jersey, Atlantic City, but it is good to be back. What's up, fellas?
Great. And let me go to the state of 10,000 lakes. I don't know whether they are lakes or they are ponds, but they call them lakes. I'm from Florida. I know what lakes look like. Mr. Everett Murray, do you have 10,000 lakes?
We get more than 10,000 lakes. Look, let me just give a shout out to the person who sang the jingle for our show. The best jingle on all of online Liberian platforms, I think. It's a great jingle. And also, thank to Dr. Booty for being here. Our warrior not going to come today, but we're here for another exciting Sunday. So I'm looking forward to it. And welcome to Attorney Freeman. It's a pleasure to have him on the platform.
Great. And let me switch down south to the great state of Texas, Houston. We got problem. Mr. Tower, do we have any problem in Houston there?
Right now in Houston, everything is good and it's working well. We have problem in Liberia. First, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Morris because I was worried that he was not going to be here today, but I'm glad that he's here.
Thank you very much. Let me go to the Queensland. Let me go to London. Let me go to Great Britain. Dr. Fidel Booty, how you doing there, sir?
Oh, I spent 4 hours watching that video.
Come run away.
Oh, he lost his
The,
signal.
the Queen
Let me
is
go
off.
to Mr. Anthony Gay. Where are you now? Are you in Minnesota? You in Washington D.C.?
No. I'm in Philadelphia today.
Huh?
I'm in Philadelphia today.
Okay, in the city of brotherly love, the real city of brotherly love. Mr. Nambe was faking it, but you are the real guy. You from the city of brotherly. What's going on over there with your kush and your drug infested city? What's happening over there?
Oh,
That's right.
Well, I woke up to the. Yes, it was not yesterday or the day before yesterday. I woke up to the earthquake thing. I was
That's
sleeping
right.
with that whole thing happening,
Wow.
and yeah, I woke up and man, I turned the TV on and everything. Before I saw the alert on my phone, I'm like, what? So I was like, hold on. I couldn't believe it. So I turned to the TV and it was earthquake, 8.4 magnitude in New Jersey. I was like, wow.
Wow.
4.8, not 8.4. You'll be dead.
Sorry, my man. I flip it around 8.4. Wow, that was gonna be worse.
All the building on the ground now.
That one gonna be worse. Hey, that one, I don't think anybody gonna survive. But yeah, so that's why I woke up to, and it was, everybody I know. I don't know if it was 2009 or 2010 in Jersey again. There was something that happened in North Carolina, and we received the aftermath in Jersey. That one I experienced. I saw lipo going back and forth. I was standing in front of the building, and the ground get went like this. It was so quick. It lasted for at least 20-30 seconds maximum. But this one, I woke up to the news, so I don't know, how I was gonna be there if it was real. I was gonna be in my sleep. So
Thank you very much. We got a full house, Dr. Booty. You were on. It looked like you didn't consult the queen when you came on, so they cut you off. How you doing there, sir?
they got
Well, if I have to consult the queen, then I wouldn't be able to join you guys because she's not with us anymore. Wherever she is,
Yeah.
I don't want to be consulting with her at all. Not anytime soon, anyway. No, I think it's probably just an internet connection. And I'm always glad to be here. It's lovely to see Mr. Nangwe, Mr. Eastman, Mr. Tao, Mr. Gay, obviously Mr. Morris as well, because he was thinking I wasn't going to call his name. And yeah, Councillor Freeman, I don't know whether we've met before, but it's nice to be here with you as well.
Yeah, we should talk sometimes after the show.
Great.
Mr. Booty, I transited in a city, for a few hours in London.
My brother, don't ever talk to me. I saw your pictures there on you. They think I was vexed, but we'll talk that one later.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome our special guest. Councillor Freeman is here today, first time on our show, and usually when you come, we do a toast. This is our toast from South Florida.
Well, I got an empty glass here, and
okay.
I get it, come here.
Yeah,
I'm Anthony Freeman.
Welcome.
Just a correction, I'm Anthony Freeman.
Go ahead.
Anthony.
Okay, Anthony Freeman, go ahead, introduce yourself, sir.
Oh, well, I've been on the multiple FOL shows. I think Jimmy Eastman, we on the economic show and the legal show. And sometimes the political bulldog gets me on. So, well, I'm Warner Freeman. I'm happy to be here and, contribute to the discussion to see how we can shape public opinion in Liberia. Thank you.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a full house, so let's get to it. Since we have people with interest and knowledge about the legal issues in Liberia, we have to, first of all, set a stage why we want people with legal minds to be on here to discuss issues. First of all, somebody please check it got to be Jimmy Eastman, you're getting the feedback. This man who's going to be the technology guru is always come here messing up our stuff. So guys, people don't know why you are off. Okay guys, there you go. So we have been hearing all along that the new administration was coming in with the rule of law, that the country was off track. There was nothing working. They had people who knew nothing about the law. There were violations of the laws everywhere, and that we're coming back to swing the pendulum into the middle. where knowledgeable people, years of experience will come and deal with the nation and set the nation straight on a path that will be recognized and respected by the Committee of Nations. That was the premise. So here we are today. At the beginning, there's a lot going on in Liberia that title on violation, not only on legal rights, but international law, human rights violations, and the likes. So let's get to it because we have a lot to do here. Dr. Booty, I will let you to start off this one here. The legal Quagmire as it stands of the Boakai government. Number one on that list, the asset recovery. Does the recovery team have a legal authority to seize private property or make arrests? Do they have arresting powers? Even when the president gave you the go-ahead to do so?
Well, thank you for starting with me. I know Mr. Morris wouldn't like that, but I'll go ahead. And I want to shoot my first shot. At least it's out there. Before we continue. Look, I think last week we were here, and maybe unfortunately for me, Mr. Morris and I agreed that the president has the power to set up this asset recovery team. We also know that the executive branch of government in Liberia, in our system, is the executing or implementing arm of our legal framework that we have. So the legislature makes the law, the judiciary interprets that law, and it is the executive that has to go out and implement the law or enforce the law. So I think arresting people in Liberia is the power of the executive. Impounding vehicles in Liberia is the power of the executive. So the head of the executive, I believe, and obviously I'm happy Anthony Freeman is here, and I remember we were on one of the legal talk shows last month, I think it was. So that's where I remember
sure.
it. Yeah, I think the president has the power, and without having seen the order that brought this asset recovery team into being, we don't know what stipulations are in there. The president probably stipulated in there that they have the power to go and arrest. He probably gave them the power to enforce the mandate that he's given on to them. And if he has, then yes, it's legal, as we said last Sunday on the show.
Okay. Anthony Freeman. I have a serious disagreement with what Dr. Booty is saying here. The arresting power is vested in the legal arms of, let's say, the police state. The president cannot order the arrest of anybody or seizure of any property without the due process of law. You, the legal mind here, what says D?
Yeah, firstly, let me agree with Booty in terms of the setting up of the institution. The president can use executive order to establish institutions. It might be limited in scope, but yeah, they can establish institutions. But I think when you talk about arresting powers, that's a far more detailed power of the president. So I don't know. I think I read the act. I didn't quite see it there being explicit. And now the thing about law is, if you want to include something, you have to include it. If you don't include it, it means it's excluded. But that's some legal theory. But the key thing is, if they are operating under the Liberian Constitution, if they are operating under the precedent set by the Supreme Court, then they have no other option but to go by way of the due process of law. Firstly, Article 20 under our Constitution provides the minimum benchmark that you cannot divest somebody of property or privilege of anything that is in their possession except by the due process of law. That's Article 20. And then 21 gave furthermore details. So whether Boakai gives them the power or not, they have to operate under the Liberian Constitution. Now, beyond that, the Supreme Court has waded in when it comes to what constitute due process, because now the Constitution said due process, but it didn't properly define due process. But in case law from the Supreme Court have dealt with due process in a what we call a landmark case in 1936. And that case is called Wallow versus Wallow, 1936. It's actually a divorce case, but it ended up being a landmark case for due process. And in that case, the court defined what constitutes due process. That one, there has to be notice. So you have to give the person proper notice. Two, there has to be an opportunity to be heard. And three, there must be an opportunity to defend yourself in an orderly proceeding that is designed to the nature of the case. An opportunity to be heard in an orderly proceeding. Okay? And the court says, look, before the law condemns or before it takes away, it must hear. And it must proceed upon inquiry, upon investigation. And it can render decision or render judgment only after a trial. So you don't have to be a lawyer. Just ask yourself, what has the how do you call them?
Asset recovery.
Asset recovery team.
Look at the standards set by the Supreme Court in 1936.
36.
Okay. Look at the Article 20 of the Liberian Constitution. Then ask yourself, are they in line with this? My answer is no. And I doubt that from the composition, from the nature, from the way it is organized, I doubt that they were ever going to proceed by way of law. And sure enough, their conduct have shown that they are not necessarily proceeding by way of law.
Great. Let's go to Victor Nangbe here. The United States Constitution, which is one of the constitutions that we have always quoted, says if your boss, no matter who he is, instructs you to commit a crime or break the law, you have the right to refuse.
Absolutely.
If Joseph Boakai didn't, or somebody says imply, can you just get up and go and start arresting people because you say I have been empowered by the president?
Well, I know, but I hope that is not what you're implying that the Asset Recovery Commission is doing. The commission is not illegal. I mean, I agree with Dr. Bully here, and I agree with Tony Freeman. They were constituted by the presidency. The presidency does have the powers to constitute commissions. And so there are a commission that was constituted by the presidency. Now, I do believe that they have to work in close coordination with the legal system. I think we've said that here on several occasions. They can't go out and begin to seize and arrest properties. They have to first go to court. They have to obtain the necessary court order or warrants. And I believe they should be working in close collaboration with the national police. They should have the police who accompany them if they have to go and seize a physical asset. So, but I think they're not that the first execution we all say here, they left a lot of questions the way it was carried out. And I believe that they are now stepping back to relaunch much properly and more effectively. But they are not illegal. They are legally constituted because they were given the powers that are possessed by the presidency. But they do not. I don't believe they have the powers to go out and arrest. They can't do that. That power rests with the judicial system. We have three separate branches of government. So yes, I think they should do the investigation and establish that a particular asset warrants recall, and then they have to go to the court and get a warrant, and then go and execute a warrant, and then I think that's how they should proceed.
Yeah, but I said about McGill, let me come in, Mr. Gibbon, let me come in here.
Yeah, 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, please do us a favor, share this show in your network. As we know, your friends may not be my friends, your network may not be my network. Some of us are not getting our notification for some reason, and our IT folks said, if you were receiving notification in the past and you are not receiving it now, while we are live, please go to the follow button. Follow the button, and then follow the show, and then you have basically you got to resubscribe. That's what it is. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's approach this from the rudimentary level. Okay. Law enforcement agencies like police departments, national security, they are typically empowered, right, to make arrests within their jurisdiction. And we have to remember, within their jurisdiction, the authority is derived from statutes that enacted by the legislature, and it's often outlined in the Constitution. Now, with that said, specialized agencies as well can have arrest powers, especially if they for enforcing regulations such as taxation, protection, immigration, like an immigration officer. They also have arrest powers. Even contractors, even people who hired, through a contract, they can be given the powers to arrest as well. Okay, so but to add to that, a citizen who witnesses a crime can affect an arrest. But again, you have to follow the rules of a citizen's arrest. So what we're looking at is this body that has been authorized to retrieve property. They have to still abide by the rules of arrest and seizure and arrest. They cannot act outside the law, and this is why we see the Supreme Court shut them down, because they were not following the due process, and that is they had identified a theft or government property, and they have tried to obtain it, and the only way they could proceed is through an arrest. So this is what happened. They went outside the boundaries of the powers they were given them. And that's why we see this colossal calamity. We noticed, and the Supreme Court had to intervene and say, "No, you guys got to get your act together." And that's what we hear the Supreme Court say in a few days.
Great.
So, Jerome, quickly, I know that Tony here might have a little bit more to say about this. So let's, Jimmy references, for instance, the Bureau of Immigration. The Bureau of Immigration has statutory authority. It was established through statutory action. This Asset Recovery Commission was established through an executive action. Now, the executive cannot go out and do the work of the judiciary, right? And I believe they are clothed the authority of arrest and that kind of thing. And this is why I was saying, yes, they do have the right to investigate and bring charges, but they cannot execute without the presence of, say, the Liberia National Police. Or such
I just gave you an example. Even a citizen, when he witnesses a crime, can affect an arrest.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Are you saying that they're right in what they're doing and the way they're carrying it?
They will know what I'm saying.
No, I don't think he said that. He said they have to follow the law.
Exactly.
Yeah, Mr. J, I asked him a question. Please, let him answer the question. I'm sure Mr. Ismail can answer.
That is the question. I said they have to work within the boundaries of the law.
Okay.
And if they go out, and that is why they're being shut down, because they did not do that.
Mr. Elvis Morris.
Thank you.
Here we are, like he says, there's a great difference between an executive order that lasts for 12 months and a statute that is enacted by law, by legislative power. Here we are, when we talk about the usurpation of somebody's power. Let's say in Liberia, we had the LACC, we have, you need all the CCs they have in Liberia that's supposed to do this. Everybody knows that this commission basically was put together to create jobs for partisan, but it actually does not have any power, because we saw the day before, people in Liberia were taking pictures of people's property and putting it on another network of their network and saying, you got to go and, arrest these people, take their property. And Mr. Clark Martin Clark himself said, we got tipped off that people stole these properties, so we will cede it until they can prove that they owned it. Go ahead, Mr. Elvis Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Before I make any jejune opinion here, I want to be backed by yeah, I want to be backed by the facts. Look, I think we all agree that the asset recovery team you know has been constituted legally by the president. I think that the attorney said it here himself. The issue here is, I think Attorney Freeman has said it, and I use that same argument that there's a difference between recovery and retrieval. In this case, where you have something like the GSA, can go and retrieve government property that was given to ministers and other government officials for use during their term, and after their term has expired, that property can be retrieved. So legally, the government can retrieve that property. But in the case of former police director Patrick Sulu, right, where the property is now quote unquote in his name and he purchased it, you can't just go and retrieve or quote unquote recover that property without due process. And I think that's what the attorney was making the case, because if you have the LSCC go and recover or retrieve government property through the GSA, or the GSA go and retrieve government property, and that property is not in the name of the person who is in possession of it, it still belongs to the government. You can retrieve it with the the police who have the constituted invested power to arrest and retrieve government assets. That's fine. But when you go to people who have personal property that is registered in the name, and the case also of Finabondo, allegedly she has some taxes that they try to seize. You have to go through the due process, because this is property that this person is claiming. You can't just arbitrarily, take it away from them. You have to, prove through court that it belongs to the government, that it was ill-gotten gains. You have to do all of those to a court system. So that's the difference here. We're not arguing that, the asset recovery team is not legally constituted, or that they don't have the legal right to go and retrieve government property if it is in fact, for the government. So on that case, I would just ask Councilor Freeman, Attorney Freeman, if he agrees that if the GSA had earmarked certain properties, whether it is vehicles or other office supplies or whatever it could be, that this was not this person's personal property, and as such, the asset recovery or the asset retrieval team can go and get it. Legally, that would be fine, because that's the government's property. But if it's somebody who's claiming to stay in the name, in the case of Patrick Sudu, you can't just go and arbitrarily take it from them. You have to take them to court. That's the distinction that we want to understand here, because we think that they're not going to get cars that was assigned to people through the job. They're going to take property that they feel people got through ill-gotten gains or maybe stole from the government. You can't arbitrarily just go take it from them. You have to take them to court in order to establish that it was stolen, or it was the government's property that they failed to return. So maybe the attorney can answer that question, because I don't want to give my opinion to be facts. I just want to get clarifications today, especially on these legal issues.
Great. Mr. Freeman, real quick before we go to Mr. Towell.
Yeah, I mean, his analysis is perfect. I mean, I have nothing extra to add, except maybe a little point that normally when people speak of asset recovery, they're really not talking about government cars and government computers. I mean, that's part of the reason why I say not every lawyer is schooled in the area of financial crimes. So some lawyers, they may be limited, but asset recovery is basically tied to money laundering, high-profile corruption cases, secret assets, offshore accounts, those kinds of things. There is no semblance of thought that anything called asset recovery means somebody is going to go on a car road looking for a government car. I mean, I don't even know how to describe that, But Evan spoke quite perfectly on it, so I just add that small part to it.
All right. You're muted.
You're muted, Mr. Goodman.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Towell, here we are talking about, there's obviously it's clear there's a difference between asset recovery, like, you're on a job and you are assigned a car. And when you are fired or you resign, you have like 24 hours to return the key, your office keys, a computer access code, password, everything has to be. In fact, in my office, everybody that I hire, your last paycheck, receiving your last paycheck is contingent on all going through the checklist of everything, the property that you have from my office, you turn it in, and then you get your final check. Even now that we're doing direct deposit, I will tell the finance department to immediately put stuff to that account. So we do this, but there's a difference now between that and like he was talking about the asset recovery and all of that. I know it belongs to us and we want it. But when you are actually going after somebody's property, the reason I'm keen on this is because we just went through this here on Focus on Liberia with the Spoon episode. The United States government found him guilty of theft. And they went through the legal system and they went and identified his property and confiscated them to sell them to recoup. That is totally different. Go ahead.
Look, one correction. He willfully gave his right to due process when he made that plea with the government. I just read that case. He willfully, but legally, if they wanted to take him to court, they had to prove that this property was gotten by the ill-gotten gains that he got from this case. If it was property that he bought before the time that this thing started, they have no legal right to that property. So he forward his right to that.
Before the plea deal, it was part of the plea deal.
Before even the plea deal, the authority of the whatever the seat FBI, whatever it is, to go and serve the writ on him and seize the property, they had to go through the court. The asset recovery team, they reserve the right to identify and let the attorney say, yes, I expected asset retrieval, that's the work of the GSA. They should be retrieving the asset. But what he's describing is what, for instance, I keep saying, that's what I had imagined this commission would do. You know, go after the big bucks that are stashed away in the various banks around the world, in Liberia, all across it. So, yeah, if they think they need to go and seize vehicles and all that, they have to go to the court and obtain a warrant, whether they're retrieving or recovering, whatever that is. They can't go out and begin to grab people's property and set up roadblocks. They can't do that. They don't have the authority to do that.
But seizure is different than forfeiture. That's the case I was making, Mr. Nambo.
Yeah, but forfeiture, I mean, I don't know.
He forfeited those property without going through the due process as a part of his plea agreement with the government. That's what I was saying.
Mr. Morris, plea agreement is due process. He was heard. He was given notice. Right? That's due process.
You're not understanding me, but let's go to the next person.
Mr. Tower, you got next. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, look at what happened here. I think there is one thing that we have to really understand here, right? Why are we always on this show discussing all of these things? It's as a result of corruption, right? Everything else that we are discussing here, the government is not working. This one is not happening. And if that is the case, because something is legal in terms of the law, don't make it right. And they say, oh, you have to go and repeal the law. But yes, if you look at it from that perspective, right? So we have to be able to change some of these laws. We have to be able to actually zero down on some of these laws, right? So we are sitting here. Mr. Freeman is a counselor, but what we are discussing here have nothing to really do whether you're a lawyer or whether you some kind of expert in front. We are looking at this stuff very plain and simple. If it is written in the Constitution, right, that the president have this power to constitute this committee and to do X, Y, Z, and they're doing completely opposite. We have lawyers, right, legal experts, right, on this team. It's said by accident that they are just walking the street and seizing vehicles. Something that I think many of us here agree with. I agree with that they didn't need that whole asset recovery team, that we already have things in or institutions in place, like recovering those vehicles and stuff, like from Patrick or whoever. The GSA could have done that. So then it brings us to the point where Councillor Freeman said going after money laundering and other stuff, right? But why didn't they go that route? It's not to really go off point, but to say we are discussing is like we're trying to say there is a reason why they have no intention. They have no intention. They are not making mistake. They decided to do this like this. So we say, okay, now they're going back and they're going to re-strategize and they're going to come back, but they're going to work closely with the Justice Ministry. They're going to work closely with LACC. They're going to work closely with GSC. $20 million is already allocated for those guys, for that area, an area that you cannot easily look into. This is corruption in motion. So from this point, I would say that as a recovery team is illegal because it's the premise on which they set it up and the intent is not good. So we think that they're stumbling around, they're making mistakes, and they just kind of misstep here. No, it's not so. Because they
So you say the team itself is illegal?
I mean, the team is
No. I'm saying,
Please, yeah, allow him to finish, please.
Yeah.
it may be duplicating, but I'm not sure if it is illegal.
yeah, I'm
I
saying
think that's what he said.
I'm saying for me, understanding it that is duplicated, that's 1, 2 is really not necessary. They came in and they don't even know their duty as we are putting it, but I think they know. But it's just that they don't have the intention to. The guys don't intend on going after anybody really, because they themselves intend to also launder money, which they already started doing. Just the asset recovery itself, I'm convinced that it's a means by which they move money that fall away. There was no budget approved. They say, hey, it's emergency, it's executive order, finance minister release money. Money was released. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I see it as corruption taking place, and I would consider it actually illegal. That because we want to say, oh, it's legal, it's set up, but all the major crimes that happen in Liberia, they're happening legally.
On what grounds will you consider the asset recovery team illegal?
Representative paying themselves $30,000, and we say, oh, yeah, there's too much, it's suck up 50% of the country budget, but it's legal. That's a crime. That's corruption, right? But it's legal. So this is where we find ourselves.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Gay, I think my homeboy from Grand Bassa County, Senator Darrell Dillon, says, as long as you put in the budget, I'm fine with it. You can give yourself $1 million. As long as it's in the budget, it's fine. Go ahead.
Look, so I think something is missing from this discussion this afternoon, and that is the executive order for the asset recovery team in itself gave a TOR to the team as to how to proceed. And I think line number 3 and 4, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have that copy?
Of the what? The executive order?
Yeah, that particular executive order for the asset recovery team.
I think so.
All right, get it prepared, and afterwards you can refer.
I got it on my screen, but I mean, what's the point you're trying to make?
So the point is, in that asset recovery, there's a term of reference as to how the team should proceed, and they also they talked about due process. So apparently, the head of the team and the rest of the other people within the team didn't do their homework. I don't think the president is naive to just write an executive order and give them a blank check to go and do whatever they want to do, right? That executive order itself spell out how they should go about, and due process is mentioned in there. So they didn't do their job. They had and everybody else within the team dropped the ball. They acted very recklessly. And that's the reason why we are what we are, because that executive order itself told them what to do and talked about due process. I am not a lawyer. I don't claim to be one, and the legal person is on the show here. But I think I'm not trying to give praise the president, but I think he did something that was very strategic, and his team did not follow through.
Yeah, but there is a legal framework governing arrest powers. It's already existing. And they did not follow that legal framework. And this is why the Supreme Court had to shut them down.
Yeah, you're not saying the exact same
No,
thing.
no, Mr. Eastman, the police is accompanying them to go and make these arrests or seizure of these properties. So the constitutional power is invested in the police
Okay,
who is working with them.
Yeah. But Everett,
Yeah, well,
Everett, to
but
the,
can I come
so
in? Can I
Everett,
come in a bit?
Yeah.
Can I come in
yeah.
a
Well,
bit?
let me end my thought, right?
1 minute, attorney. Yeah, go ahead. Get close up.
Good. So to the point that Everett is making, that the police have, authority, absolutely. But the police also supposed to know the law. As a police officer, you're supposed to know the law, right? And anything of that nature, like the Attorney Freeman said, asset recovery, there are things of a big crime, and people have to have due process. As a police officer in uniform, you're supposed to understand the law. That is just basic of you. You're supposed to know the law. So you can get follow a team because follow, let's go arrest people, and so you follow the team to go arrest people. Now, not applying the law, I don't get it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, is
Go ahead, attorney.
yeah is why I think they have a complication. Okay, so you set up a committee of 25 persons, even though you put the lawyer at the head, but almost all that 25 persons, I think they are just, I don't know, social media people, and the composition of the committee itself, they don't have the knowledge, because even seizure is based on probable cause and application to the court. Seizure, just seizure. If you want to freeze, application to the court. If you're going to convict, application to the court. If you're going to confiscate, application to the court. You want to forfeit, application to the court. So I don't know what part of the process will not require application to the court. But you are talking to people who don't understand. Okay, so the head is a council, but the rest of the other 25 members, I don't know where they stand. So they may be ignorant. And if the group gets together and they want to do something, maybe the head just decided he's going to follow them. But the composition and then taking that office and putting it in the office of the president is another significant wrong. Because you turn what's supposed to be a legal process, you have now turned it to be a political process. All we know, the office of the president is the center, the heartbeat of politics. You cannot take a legal institution and put it in the middle of the office of the presidency. They are going to operate politically. And that's why they decided it was their job to go out and look for all the CDC people and seize their property. Mm-hmm. So I think the president structured the committee in a way for them to act politically, and that's why you see them doing.
That what I will say. It's just a smoke screen for corruption. That's what I will say. Well, we're not. What are you trying to do? It's just a smoke screen for to absorb that money legally, but without doing the work they set off to do.
Great, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to On Point. Those of you who are watching the game between Iowa and South Carolina, great game. Thank you for leaving your beautiful game and watching. Some of you are watching and listening at the same time. Awesome. But listen,
Mr. Gamer, we got to make a programming note. You will see we will have barely any commenters on our YouTube page because we're using our backup FOL page today because we have a suspension from YouTube. So if anybody is watching, you have to go and subscribe to the FOL Liberia, FOL-Liberia page on YouTube in order to get this broadcast on YouTube. Because our main page is down for a few days until the suspension is over from YouTube. So just give that announcement to the people watching.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, everything is politics, everything is political. At one point, I hosted a gentleman here from another political party. He was so upset. When he left, he went and did a write-in campaign to Facebook, reporting us for being XYZ, and we lost most of our audience and everything else. So it happens. All you have to do is resubscribe, go to the channel, go. It has to be live. You cannot go to a recording when it has to be live. Either one of those live shows and do the process and just refollow. That's how. But let's go to number 2 here. We're going to come back to that. Let's go to number 2, which is another thing that got me scratching my head. The legislative caucus from Nimba County decided to do a resolution writing the House and the president to reinstate their kinsman, Kabeda Janet. They think that he was illegally removed and the president should supersede everything in the country and reappoint him. Since the death of George Nambi, they think that seat belongs to them. Where is Anthony Gay? Okay, he's not here, so we won't start with him. Let me start with Mr. Nambi. Mr. Nambi, the same group of folks that said during the campaign they will do all they can to make sure that no Southeasterner ever hold power in the country anymore. They are now coming together and saying the president of the Republic of Liberia should supersede the Constitution and reappoint a man who was impeached and removed.
Well, yeah, my understanding of this case is that it appears that Justice Janet his removal was not done legally. I believe he took the matter to the ECOWAS court, and I believe the court gave the Liberian government 2 options: to either pay him off or reinstate him. And from my understanding, they haven't done any. So if the people of Nimba are calling for his reinstatement, it means they are choosing the other choice that they were giving, which is either pay the man off or reinstate him. Now, as to whether he is entitled to that seat that was vacated by the death of Justice Nambi, I am not sure. But I listened to Senator Dillon, and he himself, he is conflicted because I think he was in the Senate when this action was taken. So he feels too that Justice Janet was not treated fairly. If we will agree, then the government of President Weah not doing any of the 2 things that were given to the government by the ECOWAS court, then I think Justice Janet has to be made whole one way or the other. So in that case, yes, he could be reinstated or he should be paid off.
Great. Mr. Anthony Gay, does any court have any authority beyond or above our
Supreme Court? Exactly.
So not being a lawyer, I can give my layman thing that Supreme Court is a sole arbiter of the Constitution of Liberia, and they have the final say wherever the state stands. I don't think any other court has any superiority over our Supreme Court in Liberia. They are the head, and whatever they say, and that's it, right? So I think Anthony Freeman can help us in that regard. However, the process by which Justice Cabinet Janet, Associate Justice Cabinet Janet, was removed was fraudulent. I was in Monrovia when that happened. But again, since the Supreme Court already ruled, what can I say? So help us, Anthony Freeman here.
Did the Supreme Court rule on this?
Yes, the Supreme Court upheld it. The Supreme Court upheld it.
Listen,
okay. Wait a minute. It's not even a legal matter for that matter. And when I
it's a political matter that was going through the House and the Senate.
Listen, guys. Listen, guys.
ECOWAS court doesn't have jurisdiction over Liberia, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Mr. Jimmy Eastman, exactly. But I'm going to leave. I'm going to have Mr. Attorney Freeman to be the last, because when he speaks, that's the legalistic. That's it. So we will make him laugh. Mr. Elvis Morris, when we are talking about the United States Supreme Court, it sounds to me as though the U.S. Supreme Court have ruled, and you get it, you say, no, I'm going to the United Nations. And what
Right.
the United Nations says you got to do because they said you have to do it. Talk to us about it, Mr. Morris.
Look, I will echo what Mr. Eastman was trying to say because we know how impeachment works. It's not a criminal case where he was convicted and you can go to court and say he was wrongly convicted. It was a political process that went through the House, subsequently went through the Senate, 2/3 majority. So I think you have to have there would be what 75 out of the 100. No, we don't have 100 signature. We have 13, right? So I don't know what 75% of 30 would be, but you have to have 2/3 majority. And
They went with a simple majority of 16.
Okay. Once you have the majority, that's the process to impeach a judge, a Supreme Court justice. It went through the process. The Supreme Court justice who came from a bench with his colleagues that he worked with for so many years. His own counterman was the Chief Justice. The court heard his appeal and upheld his impeachment.
Yep.
And he sought redress outside of the country to a regional court, which ruled in his favor. But again, maybe Councilor Koyenik can, not Councilor, but Attorney Freeman can pontificate on whether the judgment from the ECOWAS court is binding on the Liberian government and if they have to adhere to it. Look, it was a political process in our country. Is it feasible that another regional court would tell us that we must reinstate a justice that was impeached through our political system in our country? I don't know if they have that right. But again, we have the legal mind here, and he can further elucidate on it.
I believe before the legal mind comes in, I believe if you believe that your Supreme Court in the ECOWAS region, for reasons that you can specify, is being impartial, yeah, you can go to the ECOWAS court. And if
how were they being impartial? That was their colleague, somebody that they have a good rapport with.
Hang on, Morris. If the Liberian government sent the legal representatives to go and argue before the court, then it means they also recognize the authority of that court. And if a judgment comes down from that court, why would you not respect that judgment?
Great. Mr. Tao, here we are talking about, let's compare the two. The United States Supreme Court, the Liberian Supreme Court, ECOWAS as same as the United Nations. Can you say, because we are part of the United Nations, so whatever the United Nations says supersedes the U.S. Supreme Court, Mr. Tao?
Okay. So first we'll start with the U.S. If you notice, the U.S. was one of the architects behind the ICC. They financed it. They had their judges on that court. And after they constituted the court, they ran to a constitutional issue here in the U.S. because no other law can supersede the U.S. Constitution. So once they saw that, and then there were tension within the whole judicial system. So there were pressure, and so the U.S. then, the same U.S. that pretty much was the architect behind the ICC, had to pass a law that is called the Hague Invasion Treaty. That if any of the service members committed whatever crime anywhere, the U.S. would send their army, by whatever means, to go and invade the court, invade the jail, and free that person. So I'm just saying, so it's based on that no law, right? Go and read the book of Henry Kissinger arguing against international jurisdiction. So I'm just giving you that. I've read that. Now we come to Liberia with the same stuff right here, right? You go to the ECOWAS was set up. If I read the ECOWAS chapter, there is nothing really in it that is binding. Everything that you see in the ECOWAS chapter is almost like it's almost like voluntary, right? The member states are not really held responsible in any way, they will have to do it almost like by choice. So if you see, when Liberia was in war, ECOWAS came over there because what they did was they brought in the sitting government had to call on them. If the government in power says no, ECOWAS can't come. So it's based on this. That is why when ECOWAS made the judgment, the Liberian government can either willingly, by I would say maybe trying to just do goodwill, accept, but no. So they cannot reinstate him or pay him because of that. And it is based on the same thing. This is what we have the sticky point about war crimes court being set up in Liberia. You see, this white child seller could not even be tried for crime in Liberia as a Liberian. They had to place him on a Sierra Leone so that then they can say he committed crime somewhere to then be able to arrest him. So he was extradited for crimes committed somewhere else. You see, because they had to get around the Liberian constitutional issue. So these are some of the sticky points. So for all of us that are trying to advocate war crime code, which we all want, because people that committed the crime. But if you see them try to force it, they're committing constitutional or they're violating the Constitution. Unless they can find some ways to maybe get around it. But if you look, I clearly said no, the ECOWAS ruling is not binding. From what I understand, from what I read, from even all the ECOWAS chapter and everything else, is not binding because they cannot force the Liberian government to put anybody back in power that was removed or to compensate anybody. If you even look, Nancy Doe, she went to the ECOWAS court. She won some cases. But it has not been rewarded the same.
Dr. Booty, here we are. You got your hand full here today, and then Anthony Freeman is going to close it off for us. But here we are. I think Mr. Taiwo made a great point. We had Nancy Doe at the ECOWAS court, got several cases there that she won, and they suggested to the Liberian government to make her whole. Same thing with Kabina Janet, went to ECOWAS. Does ECOWAS have the power to compel Liberia to adhere to what they say?
But the simple answer is yes. In terms of how they go about doing that, that's what makes it difficult. So I'm just going to quote some evidence on. So in 1975, we signed the ECOWAS declaration establishing ECOWAS. Not only did we sign that, the whole point of ECOWAS was for closer socio-economic integration. So our societies and our economies, our policies, our politics were supposed to be integrated. Now, number 5, when you look at the jurisdiction of the court, so I'm just looking at it on the website now, on the ECOWAS website. Number 5 on that list is jurisdiction. So the court has jurisdiction to determine cases of violation of human rights that occur in any member state. Now, Liberia signed that treaty, right? Liberia agreed to it that, look, you have the right to adjudicate any violation of human rights in our borders, right? Now, the difference, and again, we need to, I understand obviously that most of the panelists live in the United States, and it's easy to use the US as an example. But the US and the ICC relationship is completely different to Liberia and the ECOWAS relationship. Liberia is a signatory to the ECOWAS Charter, the creation of ECOWAS. Liberia is a signatory to the Charter in 1991 that created a court. Liberia subjected itself to the jurisdiction of the court. The ICC is not a regional body. It's not like ECOWAS. ECOWAS is a regional body. I gave you another example. So the United Kingdom, for example, was a part of the European Union. We decided to leave the European Union 2 years ago, but we've remained within the European Court of Justice. We remain within the European Court of Human Rights. So whilst the UK is not politically and economically tied to the EU, we're still under those legal jurisdictions. So if I feel that my rights have been violated as a human being in the UK, and we go up to the Supreme Court in the UK, I can then take it to the European Court of Justice, and they will adjudicate that. And if they tell the British government that, look, you have to do this, they have to do it until there can be a change of the law to quash that signature that said we want to be part of this court. the court has jurisdiction. The problem we have in Liberia is almost every president that we have is a cowboy. Even if the president is a woman, they're a cowboy. They basically believe that the law does not apply to them, and they go about doing things illegally. Justice Cabinet Janet was illegally removed, right? Yes, it was a political process, but he still had rights and privileges. And I like the fact that
But
Anthony Freeman talked about Article 20. Mr. Eastman, just let me learn. I'm happy that Anthony Freeman talked about Article 20, due process. Even within the political process, there's a reason why the Constitution says that the Chief Justice must oversee the impeachment process. Is to make sure that the person going through it, even though it's a political process, has due process of the law, right? The process applied was not due process. There were a lot of issues. Again, my interpretation, and
There you go. I'm waiting for that.
You two got it, man.
have we
Yeah,
established?
because who are you to say that he didn't get due process when the Chief Justice was overseeing the
I will not
proceedings?
Listen,
apologize.
let that
I will not
go ahead. Go ahead.
apologize for my understanding of the law. I would never apologize for it. The fact that I've never been to law school doesn't mean I don't understand the law. There's a reason why the laws are written in simple English so that anybody can understand it when they read it. There are complications that lawyers can help you to understand, but for most part of our Constitution is basic English. Anybody can read and understand it. So I'm not going to apologize for my interpretation of the law, right? And you try to throw me off a little bit, but I can't remember the article, and I'll find it and put it on if people want to know. But there's an article in our Constitution that says that you cannot prosecute judges when they make decisions in their duty. Cabinet
Yeah.
Janet was prosecuted because he made a decision in the road fund, whatever, whilst in chambers. You cannot do that. And that violated his right, right? And that's why he went to the court. And we are a signatory to the court. So the court has jurisdiction over Liberia. And we are just being illegal.
Great.
Hey, Mr. Gamer, 30 seconds before Anthony Freeman
I
make his statement, please.
haven't been able to speak on the issue yet, Mr.
Oh,
Gibbons.
I just had a question that
What?
maybe you can respond to, Anthony Freeman can respond to.
Go ahead.
So I can't remember the article, but I think there's something in the Constitution that says if a public official have gone through the due process to be impeached, he or she can no longer hold a public office. Is that correct?
I guess that's what I
Due
read.
process. The process was never due process.
How can you say it was never
What do
due
you mean,
process
never
when
due
you're not even a
process?
lawyer?
Because the
How can you say
ECOWAS
that?
court has reviewed it and said this
No,
process was not due
Liberia
process.
jurisprudence. It went through the due process of Liberia jurisprudence. You can't say it wasn't due process. How can you say that?
I've just read the treaty
Yeah.
based on what we signed, and
Jimmy
you're telling me
Eastman,
no.
Allow me to come. I will be very brief on this issue.
Go ahead.
The only way Cabinet Janet could go back is the legislature has to convene and admit they were at fault and wrongly removed or impeached.
Which is so
Cabinet
difficult to do.
That's what they have to do. They can't just say, "Oh, man, the ECOWAS code say that we should do it." They have to admit guilt. There has to be process. They can't just put that man there like that. And that is why it will not happen, because the legislature will have to admit that they did something wrong. They proceeded wrong, and that will set off all kinds of alarms, because now we have lawmakers proceeding wrongly and removing people wrongly. So they're not going to admit that. For me, I would think the only mediation for such a situation is to pay him off.
Great.
But I don't see it being possible that he be
Great.
reinstated.
Good. Anthony Freeman, you will serve as the final arbiter of the law here. You, the Supreme Court here. Does the United Nations have power over the U.S. Supreme Court? Does everyone have power over the Liberian Supreme Court?
Okay, so I will take it step by step. I will come to that question. There are a few things I want to clear up. One, the impeachment of Janet. Why it originated in politics, the impeachment process itself is legal. Okay? Because when you look at the impeachment process, the House of Representatives will draw up the articles of impeachment.
Correct.
So that is like the Ministry of Justice work to draw up the charges. Then they move to the Senate where there is a trial and the Chief Justice is presiding. And if you follow the case, Janet had his legal counsel and the government had their legal counsel. So it's just like a courtroom. Okay. And then obviously, when you get to the last section, the senators serve as the jurors.
Yep.
So for all intent and purposes, it's legal. Now with Fidel, the social activist or researcher, whatever, so sometimes they look at the law in a more theoretical fashion. But from all practical purposes, the conviction was legal. Now, the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of law in Liberia, and nobody can tell the Supreme Court what to do. But there is a but. When you go and sign a treaty and bound yourself and commit yourself to international obligations, then obviously somebody can tell Liberia what to do, irrespective of what the Supreme Court says. And that treaty is like a contract. So you get together with other West African countries and you sign a treaty agreeing that you will submit yourself to the jurisdiction of the ECOWAS court. So by signing that treaty and submitting yourself to the jurisdiction of the ECOWAS court, you also submit yourself to be told or at some point that something you did in your country is wrong. And so that's what happened in the case of Janet and in most international forums. Now, I don't want you to use the U.S. as Supreme Court as a benchmark because the U.S. occupy a very unique situation in the international scheme of things. They are a global superpower. A lot of what they do are not necessarily legal. And, and sometimes they refrain from, like Kao was saying, they sponsor forums, they support it, but they are not themselves members because they don't want anybody telling them as superpower that they were wrong and they did, so and so. So having said that, with the Janet thing, so let's say under Liberian law, Janet was convicted. But there is executive pardon, there is clemency. They can go that route. The president can pronounce that he pardoned him. And then that will give him back his citizen rights. The legislature can also have a joint resolution and sort of admit to something that, they're reinstating him or whatever. They can have a joint resolution. I believe they can do that. But for the most part, I think the president, if they want to go that route, they have to pardon him. But with respect to the options given by the ECOWAS court, it's just been unlawful that the Liberian government has decided. And I think part of the reason why they are doing it is because there is a long-standing behavior by a lot of states in the region not to abide by a decision of the ECOWAS court. I think the rate of compliance is around 40%, but it's definitely less than 50% in terms of compliance. So if Nigeria, Ghana, and other countries are not complying with the court, it makes it difficult for them to come to Liberia and insist that Liberia must comply with the code because there are a lot of outstanding judgment against some of those countries that they are not abiding by. But yes, what I want you to understand is international law is not necessarily like the constitutional law that says your Supreme Court is final, but when you go and agree in an international forum that I want to be part of this thing and hold me responsible, make it binding on me, then of course when the forum institute a ruling, it becomes binding on you, not on a constitutional law, but on a treaty law, on a contract law. So, those are things to just clear up. But I believe he can be reinstated, but they have to do a pardon. They have to do a pardon. They can't circumvent that.
But
can I just say something quickly? No, can I just say something quickly, Mr. Gaiman? Anthony Freeman, I'm happy with all of the points you made. I think I'll disagree with you on the point about my observation being theoretical. It isn't. So, for example, you're an attorney, right? No, I'm going to ask you a question. So you're an attorney, right? So if you are prosecuting someone and you withhold crucial evidence, but the jury make the process based on what is available, runs well, right? The process based on what is available runs well. So there were, but there was something there that should have happened that did not happen. Can the person who have been convicted appeal to a court to have that case relooked at? If, for example, there was a process that should have gone on, and I'm trying to think about the legal term, but I've missed it now. If something that should have happened, something that should have been provided to the defense, something that should have been done procedurally, did not happen, does the person who is convicted by the jurors heard the evidence, they convicted him based on what they heard, based on the process, can that person have recourse to have that case litigated?
I don't think on the impeachment process that works.
There you go.
And if it were a regular Supreme Court case, you have to go back to the Supreme Court. So most time it doesn't make sense to go back to the same people who just told you that you are wrong and go back and tell them, because for them to say that you are now correct would mean that they were wrong earlier. Exactly. And obviously, as a lawyer, we are a practical people. So if we have a forum and the man was represented, the other people were represented, the Chief Justice was presiding, and then there is a conclusion, we can theoretically argue about it, but the fact of the matter is even Janet knows that he was convicted. And the fact that the ECOWAS court thought otherwise and sent an opinion to Liberia, which they have to abide by, but that doesn't stop Janet from being a convict under Liberian law. So the best solution for him, if he's in good books with the president, is to seek a presidential pardon. A presidential pardon wipes it up completely, gives him a clean slate, and restore all his citizenship right. But when the case ends, Fidel, when a case ends in a court, and especially if that is the final court, then that's it.
I mean, in a lower court, and then you can take it.
The Supreme Court is the final appeal court, and it went to the Supreme Court, so you have no more appeal.
I asked the question. Because in this case, the ECOWAS court is the higher court, right? In this case.
No, it's an international court, but not necessarily a higher court.
No, well, it has jurisdiction to tell the Supreme Court that you did
it cannot override.
To tell Liberia, but not necessarily the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but Anthony, where's the Supreme Court? Is it not an institution of Liberia? So if they tell Liberia, is it not the Supreme Court they're telling?
I don't know. Maybe it's not that clear, but the point is, for law purposes in Liberia, the Supreme Court is the final decision.
I agree.
When you go to the ECOWAS court, it's Liberia that go in there as a party, not the Supreme Court. And when that instruction comes back, it's not coming to the Supreme Court. It's going to the Republic of Liberia, probably the presidency or stuff like that. So that instruction on a regular court basis, when it goes to the Supreme Court, let's say you were in a lower court, you go to the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court issue a mandate, they will send it back to the lower court to enforce. But the decision from the ECOWAS court does not go to the Supreme Court to enforce. No. It goes to the Republic of Liberia, probably the presidency or the Ministry of Justice or stuff like that. So and that comes under, like I said, it's under treaty law or under contract law, not constitutional, because constitutional, the Supreme Court is final. Okay? But yes, if you go to ECOWAS and ECOWAS say you are wrong, it comes back down to the executive to implement, but it doesn't go back to the Supreme Court for any reason whatsoever, because the Supreme Court is finished.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to On Point. Today we have legal issues, and we are dissecting them. We have our opinions. We are regular folks. We do have opinions, and our opinions do count. And we have a legal mind who tells us how it is done, and how should it be done. And for today, I learned something new. On our law, our jurisdiction, our legal system, the Supreme Court is final. Nothing else. We know that.
Really, Mr. Gibby, just let out today. You should have known that a long time ago.
No, the reason I'm saying this is because there are people who are saying because we are a member of the treaty means that we have somebody else has jurisdiction over us. But I just learned that decision does not go back to the Supreme Court. It goes to the administration, to the government. And it goes back to what? The political process. It goes to the president.
The Supreme Court moved him in. That the government moved him in.
That's correct. So, Mr. Taiwo, real quick, so we'll move on to the
Yeah,
next.
real quick. You know, to Mr. Booty's point that he's making, right? That we sign up to these regional bodies or international bodies, right? Just like every other country. But the issue here is that we have the constitutional issue from the Supreme Court that is the final. The next thing is ECOWAS really does not have an enforcement mandate, right? They're done. That is why I say it is always willing, like it's almost it's non-binding. It's the same thing with the UN. Okay, now why did we place the United States in another category? Because they have
they are superpower.
They have done. So they enforce things. They will resist. Okay, let's look at the ICC. You have all these guys, England or Great Britain, all these guys, they're there. Their people go around and commit the crime. You see them do anything. So it's might that makes right, right? Where Gus is from the Netherlands. He was implicating every kind of armed trafficking and logging the whole area outright on a chancellor, on whoever. He went back to England. While Chancellor was sitting in jail, they arrested him. Where is he? I followed the whole case. He's out. So they are not subjecting their people.
No, he's not out. He's in South Africa. He's been convicted. He's waiting deportation, but he keeps saying he's sick.
Yeah, how many? 20 years. The reason because there was a constitutional issue around these things. So this is where the Africans came from, and they started to argue. And other Africans want to understand that, yes, it's true that maybe Chancellor did something wrong, maybe Prince Johnson did something wrong. We're not disputing that. But if you have people who themselves cannot subject themselves and their people to these bodies, but then they want to use these bodies as a way of leverage to force these countries. So they will come and they will say, okay, turn Prince Johnson over, turn this person over, but they can't turn their own people over. So this is where the Africans are coming from, and they were arguing that, hey, this code is only set to persecute Africans. And if you look, that's what it is. Even the UN says stuff. They speak against Israel, against China, against the US all the time. Why you see it happening? It's not
Can I get 10 seconds, please? Quickly. One of the unique things in Charles Taylor case, he was not in his home country. He was turned over by a foreign government to the ICC. Had Charles Taylor been convicted in the ICC hold on. He was turned over to the ICC from Nigeria when he tried to go to Cameroon. They turned him over. Hold on, my man. They turned him over to Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone sent him to the Hague. And he went and held that special court for Sierra Leone in the Hague. Had Charles Taylor been convicted in the Hague while he was still president of Liberia, while even in Liberia, it would have been impossible for him to come into Liberia and arrest him. So that's a difference that we have to acknowledge. The fact that he was already in their custody and they convicted him, they had a jurisdiction over him right there. And he'd been sitting president of Liberia, they would not have come into Liberia to arrest him, to take him to jail in the Hague.
Mind you, Morris, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had to give Nigerian permission to let him go.
There you go. That's the point. I was making. That's why I say.
No, but that's Mr. Morris make his point. That's what Mr. Morris is saying. Liberia has the authority for them to do it.
Let me make a quick point. Let me make a quick point there.
Okay,
look, there's a lot of things that work in international law. So the fact that some like maybe colorful area doesn't work doesn't mean that international. For example, in trade and commerce, there's a lot of decisions that are made that may be made against the U.S. that is binding and it can be enforced against them. They have the WTO, so there's so many aspects of international law that works. But of course, the area of like war crimes and people committing their soldiers and other things, those are controversial area, but a lot works. So we shouldn't just dismiss the whole thing as not working. Even the ECOWAS thing that we're talking, if they wanted to enforce that decision against Liberia, ECOWAS can enforce it against Liberia. I don't see they have so many ways they can enforce the decision against Liberia. They're probably just not ready to enforce it.
How can they sanction us? Can they, what could they do?
Oh yeah, for example, maybe they could have a remittance that they are sending to you. They could talk with another state party and they could seize it and pay him or stuff like that. But the point I'm making is that with ECOWAS, a little bit of that is going on by other people. because there are decisions against Ghana, Nigeria, and Ivory Coast and other people who are not also enforcing. So it makes it difficult if they are not enforcing decision against themselves. It makes it difficult for them to be willing to enforce it against you. So in that case, but in a lot of other respect, in some international forum, they do have enforcement power and they have ways of enforcing their judgment, even against the US.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, we have gone over an hour. It's time for us to take a few minutes, at least a minute to stretch. How we doing this, guys?
I mean, you girls won are undefeated.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On Point. That was a time made for you to get up and stretch. Just like when you are on the flight, your doctor tells you to walk the length of the plane. So you don't get up and get blood clot. You need to get up and stretch because we've been here. This is a 2-hour show, and our health expert on the other end tells us at the intermittent time, 1 hour, we should all get up and stretch. No matter what physical shape you're in. I know some of you guys, you'll be pumping the iron. You're doing good. But yet,
I was a time people be on.
Mr. Booty look like he been doing some weight lifting too, so ain't no big deal. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On Point here. Today we are going to be making some issues, legal issues clear. So when we leave from here, when you are discussing, you are in an argument, you are in a debate, you sound intelligent because you are well informed from all angles. We're going to separate myth from facts, opinions from what is objective. And sometimes we say, like Mr. Tower said, when you're dealing with these superpowers, sometimes it is might that makes right. It's not necessarily that you are there. Look what's happening in Israel. Look what's happening at the UN. Look what happened in the United States. Hey, what can you do if the United States forfeit or decided they won't do anything when you come and arrest the United States president? The Russian president, they said they have something against him and he was going to South Africa. Is South Africa going to arrest Putin and put him in jail? So this is where we are at this point. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the debate here. Now let's go to number 3 here. This one is confusing. It makes us look bad. It makes a friend of mine who is an editor of one of the greatest newspapers of all time here. I won't call the name because everybody will know him. He says when the United States was about to send the black folks back to Africa to form the Republic of Liberia, the former Speaker of the House from Kentucky, Clay, he said these people are incapable of self-governance. They just can't do it right. They will not get it right. They can't learn anything. 1822, from the first day with the guys, they set foot on Liberia to where we are now, is 202 years, going 203 years. And we just can't get our footing. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We have a certain president that came in, did his background check, vetted folks, nominated them to go to the Supreme Court, to the Senate for confirmation. Why being confirmed? the protest stands up and says, "You have been fired." Basically, you've been recalled.
When the nomination has been withdrawn.
Your nomination has been withdrawn. You are fired before you even start working. I've never seen this before, and it makes us look bad. Even, I mean, what civilized nation does this? Let me start with Dr. Booty here. This one here, I don't want you to say I'm picking on somebody here, but I have never seen this in my life. And I didn't expect it from a man who said he was coming to the president with 54 years of governmental experience. Dr. Booty, what is going on in Liberia?
Well, there are a couple of ways to look at it. Just before coming on the show, I was reading this article on Senegal. So the 44-year-old president was in prison 10 days before he got elected. And within 2 weeks, he's already formed his government. All right. And I wrote a comment on the article on LinkedIn, basically saying it highlights the incapacity of our president. And I used the word ineptitude, right? And I've always said on the show that his decision to run to be president was selfish. I don't think he has the capacity to run behind these young guys and girls who were a ban on, like our colleague Mr. Patmo said last week. They came to do the things that they started back in during the Ellen regime, and they just continue whatever they're accusing the weird guys of doing, right? So basically, the president doesn't know what he's doing, or he's not in control. And because of that, it makes it difficult for him to look good. It makes it difficult for him to be able to get things done. And the second of the two things I wanted to talk about is that, yes, it hasn't been done before. Well, I don't know whether it's been done before, whether you appoint someone and then recall them straight away, but he has the power to do that, right? According to the Constitution, the people that he appoints serve at his will and pleasure. So if he appoints me and one day into the job, be like, yes, I made a mistake. Boom. I think I would accept that because at least he recognized the mistake early instead of allowing me to go in there and damage things before he pulled me out, right? So those are the two things. The one I'm siding on is the first point I made. I don't think he knows what he's doing. But then at the same time, he has the right to do it, and that's what he's done. And I don't see an issue with that.
Mr. Nagbe, there's something troubling here. Wherever Mr. Clay is, Speaker Clay may be spinning in and say, "I told you so." Here we are.
Mr. Gilman, stop it, man. Don't perpetuate that stereotype.
Here we are. Listen, Mr. Elvis, if someone calls you a rogue and you say, "Don't call me a rogue," and you go around stealing chicken and they catch you, then you say, "Well, they are." You don't want me to go steal. They are mutually exclusive.
No, the stereotype is that black people is incapable of governing themselves, and you're saying that he was right by making that statement.
He said Liberia.
It's very racist, and it's not contemporary.
Listen, whether it's contemporary or not, let's see what the topic here, Mr. Nambe. Here we are. You are saying, like me, as the CEO of my company here, I receive federal fund. So I'm on an obligation to do something called a level 2 background check. When the person comes here, they go through the city, the county, the sheriff department clears, and then they go through level 2 through the FBI to make sure that they are not pedophile, they are good, their grades and everything is okay. Then you send them through. For the president, office of the president, to have a group of folks, there were several of them, and then they are in the hall for the confirmation. And then they protest them and say, you have to recall the office of the pro tem, and the chief of staff said these people are associates of the past administration. And in fact, the lawyer.
There you go. It was the pro tem that recalled them, not the president.
The lawyer himself, they said he served as a persecuting arm that persecuted Gloria Scott. So this is what we are talking about. I've never seen anything like this. That if the men work for the state, Mr. Namwe, you chime in.
Well, yes. For a while we've all been wondering, what is wrong with this whole appointment process. And I think what happened last week really kind of gave us an insight, an anatomical breakdown of what is really is bugging this appointment process. Apparently the president is not in charge. He allows himself to be bullied by you know his henchmen or his supporting cast around him. I listened to one of the appointees, and the way he presented the story. Apparently, also too, the counselor who was appointed as justice minister has so much confidence in this guy. Apparently, he sounded like a pretty good lawyer, and so he invited him on the team. It sounded to me like the executive manager, once the recommendation came from the Minister of Justice, he was put on the list for and announced. And then, of course, the vultures they swooped in and came in and began to take the list apart and allowed this gentleman to go through the confirmation process and all before they went to the president to tell him no, he's not one of us. Is that really a reason to disqualify a competent lawyer from serving in the government because he was affiliated with the CDC? Is that what this government is this how the vetting process really is done? So I think this particular incident really exposed the pettiness, the incompetence, and the vengefulness, the vindictiveness of this government. And I'm really disappointed. If we have a competent lawyer who is willing and prepared to serve in the government, we're gonna disqualify him because he was affiliated with the CDC. The gentleman he went to length to explain that yes, he affiliated with the CDC, but in fact he was with the CPP, and he is of Uri's party, the ALP, and his party endorsed the CDC in the second round, obviously. So he supported the second round term bid of President Weir. That doesn't make him a sedition. Even if he were a sedition, he's a competent Liberian who is qualified to serve his country, right? And we're gonna deny him the opportunity of serving his country because we think he's what? He's from the opposition. I'm really disappointed by this. I've been wondering all along, what is it that is really is holding this appointment process? Why is it there's so many false moves, appointment announced and reversed, and I think they really got exposed. And it doesn't really they don't look good with this example. It makes this government look bad. It makes it look vengeful, vindictive. And this is not the Unity Party government. This is the government of the Republic of Liberia. All Liberians should be allowed to serve in this government unless they prove otherwise, incompetence or through some kind of disrepute or whatever. But to disqualify a qualified lawyer because you think he is a sedition, I'm very disappointed.
Right.
So, and I think this president really step up and take the lead on this because at the end of the day, the buck stops with him.
Mr. Gamer, let me go next, please. I want to clarify some things here.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I'll let young Everest come in, but that's my take on this. I really think that he do better than this.
I don't know how he can clarify someone's opinion.
He's always coming to clarify something, and clarification takes another. Reaching the
maybe clarification is the wrong word to use. But let me say this: I will absorb President Boakai of any blame in this matter. I just want to point our attention back to the CPP fracas that happened between the Yombli and the Bility faction. Remember that former Chief Justice Scott was representing the Yombli faction of this dispute. So she was very close to Yombli Kanga Lawrence, who in this process is pretty much the head of these nominations. She's in concert with the president. When there are names on the list that she feels uncomfortable with, or she feels like they won't get the vote. It happens all the time in this country. Before the president sent a nominee, they'll test the water, say, do we have the vote? Before it even goes to the floor for confirmation, they will ask all of the other senators if they will confirm this person. They will test the waters, and if they're not in favor of that person, we don't have the vote. They will try again. If they still don't have the vote, they will withdraw that person. Definitely, Senate Pro Tem Yombi Kanga Lawrence was not in favor of Councillor Livingston because she felt like he prosecuted Gloria Mususka, you know, wrongly, perhaps without the evidence in her mind. So she asked the president to withdraw this nomination because she was not going to support it. Neither were the people, you know, on her block, the Dillons and the other people who were on her side. They were not going to support this nomination, and as such, they didn't have to vote for this nomination to pass. And she communicated that to the president, and he withdrew the nomination. Let's not forget, the president served at the will of the president, and the president is in a great collaboration with Yumli. We know what she sacrificed, you know, for this president, and we know that she got that position, and it's a very powerful position, you know. So the clarification I wanted to make was that the issue comes not from President Boakai, but from, you know, Senate Pro Tem Yumli Kanga Lawrence, who has a personal issue with this person, who she felt wrongly prosecuted, somebody who was her lawyer and was fighting for her cause when that CPP situation was going on. And she communicated that with the president, and the president withdrew that nomination because they didn't have to vote, and the Senate Pro Tem was not comfortable with it.
Listen,
Listen,
Mr. Eastman.
Yeah.
Eastman, before you come in, let me
Yeah,
make this clear.
thank you. You know, this is one
Listen.
time I disagree with my younger brother here.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Okay,
One minute, Mr. Eastman, Mr. Booty, Dr. Booty.
10 seconds, please.
Okay, 1 minute. I want you to, while you are there. We all say in this country and everywhere else, the buck stops with the leader, the president. Go ahead, Dr. Booty.
And that's the point I wanted to make. When my brother said that he absolved the president of any blame, I disagree. Because if it was me as president, and I want this guy to be there, and I have this time, right, to do what I believe is right, I'll tell her, okay, put it on the floor. And you guys vote against him, and then you will take the responsibility of having to explain to the Liberian people why this guy wasn't voted in when he's qualified. You don't then bow to a pressure from the Senate Pro Tem and withdraw the president. And say, oh no, the president did nothing wrong. He's spineless. So he did everything wrong.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Nambo is trying to get him, Mr. Gilman. Mr. Nambo is trying to get him.
Mr. Eastman, go ahead.
I will let him in. Look, here's the deal. And it's very blaring what's going on. One person isn't calling the shots, because if one person was calling the shots, we wouldn't have all this conflict and recalls and all. There's several people calling the shots, and I think it shows a fissure in this administration, a break, a crack that's going to develop, because you have to be authoritative, especially in a country like Liberia, where all kinds of things go on and it not too legal. Let me put it that way. So if you are not exerting the authority, in other words, if you are not making consideration of who you're appointing, vetting, and once you give that appointment, it stays, you are undermining your authority, and this will show up somewhere else. This is just the beginning. First of all this political thing they're talking about that he prosecuted, the man did his job. Because I prosecute you, I'm doing my job. I don't even have to believe you guilty to prosecute you. Even a lawyer who defends a client doesn't necessarily have to think they're guilty or not. They have to look at the case and find ways to win the case. Wherever flaw there is, wherever loophole there is, they find it. And this man, I don't think they had enough evidence to convict her. I just think because none of them they couldn't put it on one person. I think that they weren't convicted. She wasn't convicted beyond all
reasonable doubt.
All reasonable doubt. They were not. But it's the jurors. Why did they convict somebody? You don't know who all killed the person, how they killed her, what a weapon, all that. And they convicted him. That man, that he did his job. So why should you now hold him accountable for doing a job that he was supposed to do? But what is really bad about it is you are undermining your administration by letting somebody challenge your authority. This will not go down well. That's all.
And more than that, Jimmy, this one
Pointless,
of the guys, if not both of them, they went through confirmation. So if Mr. Murray is going to argue that the president pro tem saw a defeat coming, but the people are already going through confirmation. I believe Livingston had already gone through the confirmation hearing, and he was not withdrawn, and apparently he was going to sail through. So I disagree with that argument.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of On Point. Let me go, Dr. Booty. You want to say something quick? Then I'll go to Mr.
No, I've already said my point.
Okay. Mr. Tawo.
But Jerry, I wanted to make a comment on this thing. So I
know I'm ending with you. That's why okay. Dr. Tawo. Mr. Tawo. I have the letter here. The letterhead on which this communication was written, you can tell it is not legit. The letterhead of the Secretary of, the presidency has the executive mansion, the address of the executive mansion, office of the president, all of that. This one, they just took a stamp, put it on it. And not only that, but the fashion in which the letter was written, they didn't even go from 1 to 4. It just went number 5, Councilor Lafayette Good denied or withdrew. Number 6, Adina paid. Number 7, Councilor Livingston. And number 8, Joseph Cooper. Where number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? This is
maybe they will come in a subsequent letter, Mr. Gilman. You can't preempt it.
We don't write like this. Mr. Tower, go ahead.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning when we started on this platform, we had some of these discussions, right? Simeon Freeman, I don't know the guy. I listen to some of the things he says on some of his press conferences. I think it was like a month ago. He spoke and he said that Boakai lacked the energy and capacity to run the country. And it was on the same thing of Glenda, that was one of the panelists on one of these. They were like, pretty much just told him up. And it's like, how can you not see this? You don't have to like or hate Simeon Freeman for you to see the truth in that. He lacks the energy and he lacks capacity. Because I have been an athlete throughout my whole life since I was little. And I watch a lot of sporting events. If you are a person that can really dribble if you're playing football, your ability to dribble and to handle the ball, to even pass it, would be non-existent if you don't have energy. Because you need energy in order for your mind to work, for it to give these instructions to the different body parts for you to be able to move. So President Boakai don't have energy. He cannot run behind these young guys. He is not the one calling the shots. Just like Mr. Freeman said, which we already know, there's several camps. Because since he is the head and he's not in charge, different camps have actually formed their own cliques. This is a gang. Like you have a group of gang that are controlling their own turf. This is what you see here. So when they want to go ahead and do some political stunt, that they just arrested some Zoko with 5 pounds of kush and all of this stuff. No, the gang is actually in the government. They have cliques. And each person is submitting their own name. You find out they submit 2 names for the same nomination or confirmation, and this is what you are seeing here. So it's over there. The other group that sent that, those are the little group that are trying to, they don't need to be doing that, not that kind of area. And so they send in a group that is more powerful than them, place a call, and they're out. That is what we are seeing.
Great. I wanted to bring Mr. Anthony Gay on, but he was sleeping.
No,
just like the other brother from Grand Juliet County. I was snoring on snow on the.
Gibson Gerald.
Then I'm probably for you to come in because he keep me so good. No, I'm not sleeping, man.
Go ahead.
No, I'm not sleeping. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. We understand it's all political appointment, and politics is playing a huge part of it. But let's face it, right? This unity party government set the bar so high that they have the experience, they have the competence, they have the individual to do the work. They will come and hit the ground running. And up to this time, we're still struggling to get a government together. Like Dr. Budi said, Senegal president already have a government set up in 2 weeks, right? Look, what is happening right now? Look at individual that they put on asset recovery team. They didn't even read their own TOR given by the president, right? Like, do this, follow due process. He even reminded them in that executive order, follow due process, and they are not following due process. We saw during the inauguration where the president almost lost his life. He used his bare hand to wipe his face. These things, we'll see a lot of things happening right now. By May, the 100-day delivery will not be delivered. We'll come here again, start saying the same thing. It's not just because the president does not have the stamina, but very few individuals within the government is doing their part. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, the police IG was in Minnesota sitting across the table, thanks to Councilman Russell, who initiated that, where the police IG sat down with another police chief discussing matter how to help Liberia. But the other people, they're not doing their job because they're waiting for somebody to come tell them how to function. So that's why you see everybody fighting for job, everybody fighting to bring their cousin, that nephew, that nieces into government, just so they can steal, like Mr. Tawo said. They want to steal. That's all. They're not thinking how to put the country first. So unfortunately, we will have another 6 years that will come back here again, and our country will be the same way, because I can't see anything right now that this government is putting into place that will give me the courage to say, oh, in the next 2-3 years, our country will start, getting these things done. Everything is about politics. People are not putting the country first. Look at Central Street right now. The debt are piling up. Right? When are we going to learn? Country that gained independence in the 60s, in the 50s, are far ahead of us. When are we going to learn?
Thank you. Now we come to Attorney Freeman. It's a Freeman. You gotta touch on all of these. But I gotta put this caveat in there. During the presidential meeting in Washington D.C., we brought President Paul Biya. And Paul Biya was sitting in the chair. Paul Biya.
That man are the number one sleeper, even more than Joseph Boakai. Paul Biya, where you have to wake every 5 minutes.
Attorney Freeman, go ahead.
Maybe I will start with where Boakai complicated things for himself. If you recall, on the 29th of January, Front Page wrote a story that Boakai set up under pressure. Boakai set up a team to deal with appointments. And on that team, of course, we had Ellis Tyler, Nyomdi, Dillon, Moe, and Bani, along with 3 other persons, including Grace Bay, Kung, and Luther Tappet. And some are cautioned that would be an unconstitutional act because the senators are not supposed to be participants in the selection and the nomination process, because they will be on the other side of the aisle trying to do confirmation. But I don't think caution will exercise, and Dillon and other people continue to exercise influence. As a result, we have 100% confirmations. And that is unusual when people are actually doing confirmation. There will be some people who will be rejected, obviously. But because the senators have now become part of the selection and nominating panel, so confirmation has now turned into a total formality. And this is very sad because they accused the previous regime of those kinds of practices. And now, to me, they are doing worse than the previous regime. I don't even think Jovia even share his appointing power with other people. So I think they're doing worse than we are. And there's a clear-cut violation of Article 3. But sometimes you wonder whether we have legislature because we pay those guys 8,000 to 10,000. You wonder why are they there? There is constitutional violations, and they are not raising the issue. I feel Boakai as president is not about being tired. Of course, his age, his health is an issue, but I think he lacks competence. I think he lacks principle. I think he lacks discipline. And I think he is intent on continuing business as usual. And so as a result, we are going to see a continued repetition of the errors of the past, contrary to their campaign slogan. As I see it, I see three centers of powers emerging in Liberia. There is the Senate wing that is exercising executive power. That's Yombly, Dillon, and Barney, and other people on that committee. They are exercising executive power. I see Grisby and Boakai Jr. They seem to be exercising some kind of like de facto power, Grisby and Boakai Jr. And then, of course, Boakai himself, who has the jury power to exercise. But there seem to be three centers of power. And that's why we always see conflict, because it could be something coming from either Grisby or Boakai Jr. that gets, vetoed by the committee members, or something coming from the committee member that gets vetoed by Boakai. So we see a lot of conflict. And this is not what the Liberian people bargained for, because they were looking for a safe hands, because they describe we are as being like not competent, and not fully in charge. McGill and Twe were in charge. So now we're going from McGill and Twe in charge. We're going to Grisby and Boakai Jr. and Dillon and Yombly on the other side. And I'm very shocked and disappointed at both the Dillon and the Yombly, because if you just go by the utterances, you would think that they were committed to change and they were committed to progress. But to believe that they are now part of the confusion, and that's why the executive power should not be shared, because it creates confusion when the different parts of the system start conflicting with each other. That's how you see, even though I know that with the prosecution of like the prosecutors, it's just like the presidency. If he makes a decision that is erroneous, he's not held liable for it. He's only held liable for things that if he violates the law. So the prosecutor, they have not made a comment. I'm not sure Boakai them like issue a specific reason why they're removing those guys. Though there were news in the press too about, apart from the political part of it, there was news that there was a $150,000 prosecution fund that didn't go well. There was accusation and counter accusation. So I don't know whether that played into it. But yes, the prosecutor and the judges, they should not be pursued. But you got to ask, what does Boakai believe in? Because I don't believe he believes in anything. Because, for example, his inauguration was flop. He did nothing. He said he believed in like anti-corruption. The Unity Party squandered $300 and some more $1,000. He did nothing. Sylvester Grisby had so many corruption allegations against him. Sylvester Grisby is still there. He goes into office and says he's a poor man. He doesn't have much assets. He's not corrupt. He's shielding his assets. You got to wonder what Boakai believes in. I also know on the side of the competence issue is not new. Boakai was presiding as president of the Senate when the greatest number of bogus concession deals were signed. I don't remember him saying anything before, after, and even up to present. So there is a competence issue, there is a principle issue, there's a discipline issue, and there is a lack of what should I say, progress or a commitment to continue business as usual issue. That's how I see it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen,
He did say there's quarter opportunities.
Listen, guys, we got 7 minutes here to close, so we are going to start with everybody 1 minute. Mr. Jimmy Eastman.
Okay. Thank you. We are definitely seeing a bumpy start. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing appointments that are based on more on political affinity than competence. Our country is in the doldrums, is in a very poor economic state. It requires actual expertise to emerge ourselves from here. And if they're going to allow, I only hope, as I see, that right now, President Boakai is appeasing those people that supported him. But in the event that when he sees that it's a failure, that they are not doing the job as he wanted, he would remove them and put competent people there. Because right now it's all politics, and politics does not develop a country. Politics does not move a country. All this politics is doing, we will be the same place tomorrow. It only competence people who know how to build, people know how to organize, people who are transparent and with integrity. Those are the people who build the country. So if this continues, it will just be a big political shouting over Liberia. But here's the other part: the people are getting impatient, and that can culminate in something else. That's where I leave it.
Thank you. Mr. Taiwo, 1 minute.
Yes, I just want to touch on the ECOWAS issue. I want to point out two things. ECOWAS was set up, and there is nothing really in ECOWAS. Yes, if you look at the framework, there is the obligation from member states to almost like voluntarily obey, because ECOWAS really does not have like an enforcement mechanism that like forceful. So if you look, on Liberia, since ECOWAS was set up, the first time that they actually took an actual action was during Liberia's war, right? Because though was still alive, and only the sitting president, right, can actually call ECOWAS and say, hey, we're in problem, we need your help. It's like a defense pact, right? Almost like the NATO stuff. Okay. ECOWAS took action twice, which were illegal. One was in Ivory Coast. The sitting president, Laurent Gbagbo, was in power. There was an election that was disputed. He decided that they should do recount. When they did recount in few areas, Ouattara, who came from the World Bank, that they have positioned to put in power, his lead started to shrink. So then Gbagbo took this to the Constitutional Court. France and the US saw this, and they saw that Gbagbo could not win that election. So what did they do? They rolled out ECOWAS. Under the guise of ECOWAS, they moved him, they removed him, took him to the Hague, kept him there for 10 years, and then they said, oh, we can't find anything, and they free him. The next one was in the Gambia. There was election. They prepped Badio in London, brought him in as a savior. When there was dispute in the election, they always, that is why they always don't respect due process. We have to know this. So it's might makes right. When he took it to the Constitutional Court, the US, UK, France said no. They mustered ECOWAS through Senegal. They started moving him to pretty much murder him. So he fled. So my point I'm making here is that ECOWAS will work. These institutions were set up to help us, but they've been hijacked. They're funded. They're going to be used against us. So it's not intended to work for us. So for like the Janet case, if the international players had interest in that, ECOWAS could then force Liberia to do something. So in the Janet case, I don't think they have any interest in it. So it's not going to lead to anything.
Good. Dr. Bodie, 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to recommend to you, Mr. Gaiman, maybe we replace Mr. Morris with Anthony Freeman from today.
I disbar him already.
I don't agree with Mr. Morris at all. Yeah. So anyway,
he's been disbarred.
Anyway, let me get serious. I think a couple of things I will pick from what Anthony Freeman said, and in terms of the fact that the president is incapable and the fact that he lacks principles. And these are things that I've echoed prior to coming on the show in newspapers in Liberia. And I think it's unfortunate. I think I've been reflecting recently, and one of the things I think I want to try and do more of and do some research on is try and understand how we can transform the voting population in Liberia so that they understand the power of their vote, right? So that they ask these individuals to communicate their intentions make it more practical and understandable so that they know exactly what they're voting for. I've been reading a lot recently about Socrates, and the reason they killed him because he said you can't just let any idiot vote, right? You know, you
Yeah,
have to be
but
very
now the
careful.
intelligentsia, not
Yes,
every,
that,
not in masses.
number one minute, Mr. Eastman. Let me put on 1 minute. I'm begging you.
please.
Yeah,
No, but you talk about
so
something
I,
that
I
was the
believe
intelligentsia were voting, not a masses.
Come on now,
no,
guys.
no. In
Go ahead.
Greece, it was the masses that were voting. He was arguing that the
No,
intelligentsia should
no,
be
I wasn't a
Let's go.
massive.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Gentlemen, the man got 1 minute. Let him summarize.
Yeah, I
You're
can send
bucking
you
in.
links. I can send you links to the evidence, right? So I'm not. This is not my knowledge. It's someone else's knowledge. That
I
I'm
mean, you
using.
read Aristotle, right?
Why you're bucking this man? I'm gonna.
Because he's a learned man.
Because we
No,
all
Dr.
but
Booth is a learned man.
let the man
Anthony, please represent me. Did I not say Socrates? I never said
You
Aristotle.
are
I didn't
saved.
read Aristotle. I
You
read
are saved,
Socrates.
my friend. You are saved. In fact,
Yeah,
next
I
week I
didn't
will bring
read.
a copy of the Republic so you can read it again.
Exactly. I didn't say anything about Aristotle. I said Socrates. That's the guy that I said I researched. I did,
That's
and I've
correct.
not gone as much as deep as I can. I'm still learning, right? So
Right.
there are things. But anyway, I think we need. It's a shame that our country is in the state that it's in. I think the president was selfish. I think he wanted to be president just for the name and not because he had a conviction to do what was right for the people of Liberia. And like the attorney said, it's going to be business as usual, and it's unfortunate for us as a country.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Your 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much. Look, I think we shouldn't be too hasty in our criticism of this president. As we know, this is a consultative and collaborative government that this president has set up. He consult with the people that he trusts on certain nomination. This is a man who can't know everything. He doesn't know 500 people personally to recommend them for certain positions. He has to rely on the advice of people who he trusts. So when there are folks, or maybe the consensus is this is not a good pick, won't serve you well, won't push your policy agenda forward in a positive light, the president have the right to reconsider. The Bible said, only a fool never changes, but a wise man change. So if the president felt like it was in his best interest to recall some of these nominations, that's his choice. Look, we can't say he's inept or he's incompetent until we've seen at least a couple of years of his leadership. I said it on the show during the campaign. My biggest argument was he was too old. I felt like he didn't have the energy. But having physical energy and having mental capacity are two different things. President don't have to go out there, juggling around to do his work. He can use his mind and give instructions on how to further his policy, agenda. So if his mind is in a good state, which it seems to be in a decent state, maybe his physical health is not so great, we can't call him incompetent. So let's give him a couple years and see how he does. But overall, I think it's well within his rights to withdraw nominations. And then lastly, I will say this: I was repulsed by Yega Koluba's press conference today, especially his attack on the first lady of our nation. I think it was repulsive behavior, the language he used. He has reverted back to his old self. And I think maybe we'll discuss it next time, but I think it was a disgusting press conference, especially on the elderly first lady that we have, showing any lack of respect for her and throwing out scandalous allegations. I think it's beyond a pale. So for me, good conversation. I'm happy we had Councilor Attorney Freeman. Hopefully he can join us again next Sunday. We'd love to have him on. I think he brings some balance to the argument on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Namwit. Your 1 minute, and then our Anthony will close us out.
So is this our closing, or we are
Yes.
reacting to it? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Another great day, great show. So first of all, I disagree with my young brother Maurice here. I think the problem that some of us have with the appointment process, it's not that the president doesn't have the right to reverse or to recall an announcement. It is the manner in which the vetting is being done, right? Before you get this person's name out into the public, we expect a little bit of research to go into the affairs, right? Let's take this most recent recall. these two gentlemen. What is this saying that they defended the government during the Chief Justice Gloria Mususka's case, but they were doing their job because they work for the Ministry of Justice. That was their job. That can be held against them. That they're affiliated with the CDC. They're Liberians. The last time the Constitution I checked, you're free to associate. You can join any party you want. It is not a crime to be in the opposition. It is not. And if these people are being withheld from serving in government because they were once affiliated with the opposition, it's a shame on this current government. So they need to get their act together. They need to get it together. We keep saying, let's give them a little bit of time to just come in. They've been in there almost 75 days. When are they going to get it right? And don't forget, they came to rescue and arrest, right? Those are the two acronyms. Those are the two bumper stickers they're using. Rescue and arrest, both of them imply an emergency. So you're coming to stop an emergency.
They're already doing that.
I'm sorry?
No, they arrested people already.
Anyway, thank you. I would say, like I keep saying, we're rooting for them. But what is even more disappointing is that they know they're making mistakes. Dylan is on record, but then they keep making the same mistakes, right? It's like I come to you and I step on you and I say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I come back and step on you again. Real friends. It makes sense. So
they're not grounded like you. That's the problem. They are not grounded. They're not grounded. That's the problem.
Listen,
grounded.
Listen, guys. You're taking a man time. Go ahead, land.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. Like I said, we're rooting for the government. It is the government of the Republic of Liberia. When they succeed, we all succeed. But they're making a lot of rookie mistakes, and we don't understand why and when they're going to get it right. But we're rooting for them, and we hope eventually they're going to get it right. But it's taking too long. Thank you very much.
Anthony Freeman, one of the things that I learned from Joseph Boakai, or I listened to, he says, I'm going to form a government. He said, no one party or one country has the answer to our problem. We need our professionals from all walks of life, including the opposition. That was Joseph Boakai. It is today Joseph Boakai is condemning folks because they belong to other political parties. Closer out, Mr. Freeman.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a great show, and it's kind of exciting, the mixing of the politics with law. Let me just go back on a few of the legal issues, like the Janet thing. The Supreme Court decisions are final, but do we have an obligation to abide by ECOWAS Court ruling? Yes. And that obligation arises under treaty law or under contract law. If you sign a contract, you have a contractual and moral obligation to keep your side of the bargain. The same with the treaty. I think Janet, the only way he can get back if he gets a presidential pardon, that will absorb the conviction and restore his full citizenship right. And if it's possible, he can go back. With regard to the prosecutor, the presidency hasn't spoken fully yet for us to know the reason. But I think it shows that there are multiple centers of power. Prosecutors should not be harassed or intimidated or denied privileges because they participated in a case. But I think that's only one half the story. I think the prosecutor also does not want the issue of the fact that there was a $150,000 scandal surrounding how they use that prosecution fund, because some people were claiming that they participated in the prosecution but never got the fund. The fund apparently was divided in physical cash, and there was a lot of scandalous allegations surrounding the $150,000 prosecution fund. So, but I feel even if Boakai took action, it's still a problem because he is seeing justice almost like the way the CDC saw justice. That when the people in the other party do wrong, you take action, like the way he took action on the FIU director. But Luther Tapper is still moving around. Grisby is still moving around despite all the allegations. And there are so many other people doing things in his regime, and he has not taken any action against any of his people, but he's willing and happy to take action against other people who he perceived to be from other parties. The other last thing I want to add, and Elvis, part of the reason why I'm not one of those who will be happy to give politicians long rope is because of the consequences of their errors. If a doctor makes error, one person dies. Maybe a few person, but one or two. If a lawyer makes error, somebody loses their right, somebody goes to jail, whatever. But what if a politician makes error? What happens? Sometimes the whole country is broken down. Sometimes there may be massacres. Sometimes there may be utter chaos in the society. So I'm not in for giving politicians long rope to deliver on their promises, because if you have to keep social cohesion and development, they have to deliver on their promises and not come and continue the same malpractices that we complain, that we're worried about, and continue. Because some days, what happens if some group of citizens get angry, maybe some issue, they get on the street, violent, they burn a few buildings down, then what next? So I don't buy into giving them more time. I think Boakai has to deliver. He must deliver. If he doesn't deliver, he has to get out of the way. You know, that's my take on it. But it's been a nice show. We hope we can talk again about it someday.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. If it's 4 o'clock on the East Coast here and 3 o'clock on Central Time, it is on point. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. And we look forward to seeing you next time. But as always, we say whether you're from Liberia, you love Liberia, do Liberia, develop Liberia.
Okay, all right. Yeah, this is Boakai to do that.
Yeah,
Think Liberia, love Liberia, build Liberia.
Yeah, that's correct. Everybody belongs to Liberia. We are all Liberian guys. Thank you very much.
Well, all right, good afternoon, guys.
Thank you, guys.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.